Before the world ever knew her name, Lena Horne understood one harsh truth. The spotlight can be a weapon disguised as a dream. Audiences saw elegance, a velvet voice, and a beauty Hollywood couldn't deny. But behind that glow was a woman fighting for her own humanity. Lena wasn't just performing on stages, she was walking through minefields. Every smile she gave the camera hid the exhaustion of navigating a world determined to box her in. And long before she became a symbol of glamour, she learned that fame didn't protect her. It simply lit up the battlefield she was forced to cross alone. Lena was born into a family that straddled two realities: the Harlem Renaissance's promise and the crushing limits of segregation. Her grandmother's refined social circle taught her poise and ambition, while the world outside reminded her she was black before she was anything else. Those early years taught Lena something essential: she would never truly belong to just one world. Instead, she would spend her life balancing on a cultural tightrope, constantly adjusting her identity for survival. And that balancing act would become her most silent, exhausting war. When she first walked into the Cotton Club as a teenager, she didn't come looking for stardom. But the spotlight found her instantly. Lena's beauty and grace unsettled the men in charge. They weren't used to seeing a black woman who looked them directly in the eye. She was hired, but only on one condition: she must remain exotic, untouchable, and distant, a decoration instead of a person. Lena accepted the job, but it became her first real taste of how America wanted her: visible but invisible, applauded but not respected. Hollywood came calling next, promising glamour and fame. But once Lena arrived in Los Angeles, she realized the system had already written her role. She was to be beautiful, but not fully human; elegant, but never equal. Cast in glamorous cameos designed to be cut out when the film played in the South. Lena Horne was there, but only as decoration, never narrative. She was allowed on the screen, yet denied the right to exist in the story. And every time a role was taken from her because she looked too white or too black, she learned just how fragile that dream truly was. Lena learned early that survival in Hollywood depended on mastering a very specific performance: the performance off camera. Her smile became armor. Her politeness became a shield. Every interview was a negotiation. Every photo shoot a battlefield. She had to appear grateful and graceful while pushing back against stereotypes that tried to shrink her into something palatable. Behind closed doors, the pressure was suffocating. But Lena refused to break. She would rather lose a role than lose her dignity. And she often did. When directors offered her roles as maids, mammies, and caricatures, Lena said no. And that no cost her more than the world ever saw. Every time she refused a role, Hollywood retaliated by giving her none. She watched as white actresses built their careers while she was punished for demanding respect. But Lena was unshakable. She told studios she would not help reinforce stereotypes her people had fought so hard to escape. In that decision, she wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting generations still unborn. Lena's refusal to be silent extended beyond Hollywood. She joined the civil rights movement, marched, fundraised, protested, and spoke out, so loudly that the U.S. government noticed. The FBI opened a file on her, labeling her politically suspect, because she believed black people deserved equality. That label followed her into casting rooms and backstage corridors. Roles disappeared. Opportunities dried up. Doors closed. Lena wasn't just battling racism, she was battling the state. But she never apologized for her activism. She believed truth mattered more than fame. Hollywood eventually discovered new ways to punish her. Studios hired lighter-skinned actresses who fit their acceptable image of black womanhood. Lena watched roles she should have starred in go to women allowed to pass through the cracks of prejudice. The cruelest part was not the rejection. It was knowing she was rejected because she dared to be honest about the injustice she faced. The loneliness of being too black for Hollywood, too glamorous for the movement, too outspoken for America, haunted her. She was a pioneer who paid the price of going first. While fighting discrimination publicly, Lena fought another battle privately. Her first marriage collapsed under the strain of her rising fame and the pressures that followed. The constant policing of her appearance, behavior, and emotions wore her down. She struggled with anxiety and humiliation every time Hollywood boxed her into a stereotype she refused to play. For years, she carried her pain in silence, fearing vulnerability would be used against her. Fame made her unforgettable, but it didn't make her invincible. Lena eventually realized her voice was her greatest weapon. She turned to music, not as escape but as rebellion. Her performances became statements. Her songs became truths wrapped in elegance. When she sang Stormy Weather, the world heard heartbreak. But Lena was singing about something deeper, the storm of being a black woman in a world determined to control her every move. Each note carried a lifetime of battles. And audiences felt it, even if they didn't understand the weight she carried. As she matured, Lena made a bold choice. She stopped pretending. She confronted Hollywood publicly, calling out racism, segregation, and the hypocrisy of an industry that celebrated her face but rejected her humanity. This defiance nearly ended her career, but it freed her spirit. Lena no longer cared about being pleasing. She cared about being honest. The price was steep, but the freedom was priceless. It wasn't until she married musician Lena Horne, someone who saw her beyond the spotlight, that Lena found the emotional grounding she needed. Their relationship was unconventional, controversial, and deeply complicated. But it gave her what Hollywood never offered: safety, acceptance, partnership. With him, she learned she was allowed to be tired, allowed to be vulnerable, allowed to be human. By the 1960s and 70s, America changed, and Lena rose with it. She became a symbol of black elegance, pride, and defiance. Younger artists saw her not as a glamorous star, but as a warrior who had survived battles they never knew existed. She embraced her identity fully and finally stepped into the spotlight on her own terms. This time she wasn't performing for approval. She was performing for truth. Lena Horne didn't transform Hollywood quickly or gently. She changed it by refusing to accept the roles meant to diminish her. She changed it by demanding dignity. She changed it by staying whole in a world determined to break her apart. Because she fought, the next generation of black actresses walked into rooms that once shut her out. They inherited opportunities Lena herself was denied, but fought for anyway. Lena's life was not just a story of stardom. It was a story of resistance. She battled racism, sexism, government scrutiny, and Hollywood's cruelty with a grace that was never weakness, only strategy. Behind the spotlight was a woman who fought for control of her own image, her own story, her own soul. And though Hollywood tried to silence her, Lena Horne's truth echoed louder than any song she ever sang. Her battles were secret, but her victory was undeniable. Lena didn't just live in the spotlight. She rewrote it.